a meeting of the Personnel and Hiring Committee. I'm Tim McCosker. Let's do the roll call.
Councilmember McCosker,
Here.
Councilmember Rodriguez, and Councilmember Hutt.
Here.
Thank you very much. So we have a quorum and we have 17 items on the agenda. I'm going to recommend that we take items 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, and 13 on consent. That would mean holding items 3, 6, 15, and 16 for discussion. And given the length of this agenda, I'm going to continue that we recommend that we continue items 11 and 17 to the next available agenda. So that being said, we'll come back to that after public comment. We will now have public comment. You have 1 minute per agenda item, and we will be taking public comment, of course, today. So if you have multiple items on the agenda, you get up to 2 minutes, 1 minute for public comment, up to a total of 3 minutes. And we have 2 speakers, Andrew Graebner and George Buzetti.
In general public comment.
3 minutes, go ahead.
Okay, so we have item 6, which is related to sworn personnel compensation claims. So for like LAPD, all the LAPD money that's going, this LAPD contract is bankrupting the city. So we should work to rewrite that to help preserve some money here. Okay, so now let's move on to item 12, which is related to funding for hiring for the LAPD. No, vote no on that. We don't want more cops. We want less. Okay, so we have items 13 and 14. Why was this not already a thing? And that's a good question. How many LAPD officers are working a side job at ICE? Oh my God, why was this already not against policy? Because, and you're asking, supposedly the LAPD does not assist ICE, but yet we've got who knows how many LAPD officers working a side job over at ICE. So maybe you should work with the city controller to audit how many officers, LAPD officers, are working at ICE for the information of the public, so that we can see how many of those fascists are on the LAPD force. And we've got item 15, which is related to continued updates on laying off hundreds of city employees to give more money to the LAPD. So I think we're about to go into general comment as well, but it's all on you. This contract, the city cannot afford it. So instead of changing course, you're instead laying off hundreds of city employees who actually do the work to keep us safe and to keep the city running and functioning, and instead the LAPD got a budget increase this year, meanwhile, and the LAPD is killing a record number of people, and you're giving more to that, and meanwhile you're defunding the rest of the city and laying off all these valuable city employees. So we're going to see city services reduced. We're going to see it's going to have a negative impact on the city. Also, we can give more money to this horrific department that's assisting ICE, killing a record number of people, violating people's rights. They can't even comply with their own restraining orders. Now it's a court order, court ruling that they can't attack journalists, and they're still doing it.
Next. No other speakers?
I signed up.
Did I call your name?
No, I signed up as Charlie Curry. Call it.
I did not. Why don't you come on up and tell us what you're going to speak on? Come up to the microphone.
Why aren't you going to accommodate me with the speaker?
Oh, hand him a microphone. Nice and loud then.
Right here. You can stand if you want. Right there. If
you're unable due to your handicap.
I'm a
All
dignitary,
items.
man.
All items
I control
and
the
public
narrative.
comment. You have 3 minutes. Go right
I
ahead.
control the narrative here. Item number 6, fuck the police. Snyder versus Phelps, simplify fucking faggots rape cadets. That's why priests rape boys. And I go to item 13 where Monaco, moo, moo, moo.
What are you speaking on?
I'm talking about the
What is it?
border protection.
Speak then. Go.
Yeah, and they're doing a great job thanks to who? Donald J. Trump. Because the public, the voters, like Charlie Kirk and I, have continued to tell America that we're doomed. Because we can't provide criticism to elected officials who act like dicks.
Back to the item.
Yeah, I'm
You're speaking
talking
on
about
13.
customs, border protection, Department of Homeland Security, in which, again, your office supports these criminals like El Monte that make threats to Homeland Security, like Cudahy who make threats to ICE, and like your fucking black mayor here who supports illegal, undocumented wetbacks like you. Because you like cheap labor. You like slave labor. But see, nobody wants to hear that. Everyone thinks this is a working environment. But McCocker, you and I both mentally know that this fucking world is doomed.
Back to the item.
Yeah, I'm exercising my First Amendment under 42 U.S.C. 1983 under the color of law 18 U.S.C. 242, 245. Politely, let me have my time. Fuck you. 3 minutes. Remember
Back
that.
to the item.
And as I said, I fear for my life on the basis of what you guys did to my friend Charlie because I'm a
What
political
item are you speaking on?
activist. I'm going into my non-agenda public comment, motherfucker.
Start. Okay, so
Utah, America,
we'll end him at 3 seconds.
we love you. It's sorry to know that mayors in cities, governors in states are using our arena, the mic, to use violence against activism, against advocates, against people of color, and people who are minorities. If politicians really cared, they would open up the mic to free speech. Our freedom to free speech is being attacked. And I pray to Pam Bondi, in which you all received those letters last week, in which I hope she investigates with Donald J. Trump, because he hates, like some of us hate, that Newsome guy. Vote no on 50. You're all going to hell. Priests rape boys. I love IEDs. And Snyder versus Phelps.
That's a minute. You're
fuck
done.
you,
Next speaker
assholes,
is
motherfuckers.
Matthew Garza.
Thank you.
What would you like to speak on?
Item number 16, please.
Okay. Do you want public comment too?
Yes.
Okay. 2 minutes.
Good morning. I'm Matt Garza, Director with the Los Angeles Police Protective League, and I'm here on behalf of our 8,700 plus police officers with the rank of lieutenant and below. In short, we are frustrated and angry about the repeated failures of the overpriced and underperforming Workday payroll system. We are out of patience.
No interruptions. That's your last warning. Do not interrupt the speaker while he's speaking. Last warning. I'm sorry, we held your time. Go ahead, Mr. Garza.
We're out of patience with the repeated excuses and continuous finger pointing as to why the system simply does not work as promised. If Workday were a car, we would have invoked California's lemon law and returned it to the car lot and demanded our money back. The city should be demanding taxpayers' money back and suing Workday for damages. That is what the state of Oregon recently did and won a $15 million judgment. The repeated failures of Workday are negatively impacting the city's budget, putting in peril the voluntary overtime bank program that was designed to save money and save jobs, and eroding the confidence of my members to participate in the program. In short, if this were the private sector, Workday would be fired, the controller who was in charge of paying my members would be fired, and a new vendor would be installed. Are you aware of Workday's inability to fully manage the well-established 160 and 171-hour FSLA MOU rules, which is causing the city to overpay our members overtime, as well as triggering negative CTO banks, which violates MOU 24 and FSLA? This means that during the city's current cash crunch, if members who were coding their work hours for comp time, instead of being paid cash at the 1.5 rate, that would not be able to happen. Did you know that if the city had to move to comp time instead of paying cash overtime, that Workday could not switch over and that Workday would continue to pay cash overtime? It is well past time for some adult supervision over Workday and the controller's office. No one is in charge, and the only thing that seems to happen is the constant booking of conference rooms to talk about all the problems but not solutions because no one knows how to fix the broken payroll system. It's time to fire Workday, sue for damages, and bring in a new vendor that can clean up the mess. Paying police officers should not be this complicated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other speakers? I have no one else on the cards. Okay, with that, we'll close public comment. Thank you. And I will, at the outset, I had recommended that we take items 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, either on consent or continue. And given the length of this agenda, I was going to continue 11 and 17. Would you like to pull any of those off?
13 was recommended for note and file.
Okay. I have here receive and file a motion as much as it's superseded by agenda 14. Is that?
There's another, yeah, there's another, yeah.
Okay. With that, then let me read those into the record. Number 1 would be approve the reappointment. 2 would be approve the recommendation. 4, approve the exemption. 5, approve the salary adjustment. 7, approve the exemption. 8, approve the exemption. 9, approve the exemption. 10, approve the appointment extension of Todd Bowie. 11, continue the item until the EERC acts on the increase in compensation, if they do. Item 12, concur with the public safety recommendation and approve the CIO recommendation. 13, receive and file or note and file?
Note and file.
Note and file, thank you. The motion, in as much as it is superseded by agenda 14. 14, approve the motion, and 17, continue to the next agenda. Can you call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Cosker,
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez,
Aye.
Councilmember Hutt.
Yes.
Very good.
Thank you very much. I'm going to recommend that we take item 15 first, and I think it'll be, let's make it relatively quick. I do want to spend considerable time, it's very important, on 16, and then we'll go to items 6 and then 3. So why don't we come forward for item 15? Can we have the CIO and Personnel Department?
Okay. Item number 15's continued from June, July, and August, and early September. Follow-up reports from various departments relative to citywide layoff management related matters.
On this one, I do want to give it, because it is relatively good news, given the world that we're living in. Let's do a quick report. We're going to continue it to the next agenda because we keep doing this. I think we're going to keep the transfer portal open, but I want to make sure that we give an update of where we are on the layoff numbers and where we're going from here. So why don't you go right ahead?
I'm Kimberly Squire with this.
Press the button. Thanks.
Kimberly Squire with the CAO. Right now, as of August 28th, there are 349 positions that are in substitute authority slated for eliminated filled positions. Out of that, a total of 279 of the potential layoffs are currently being held in abeyance due to agreements with employee labor organizations. Therefore, 70 layoffs are currently actively being processed by the personnel department using this filled substitute authority data.
So to be clear, of the 300 some odd, the ones that you're describing as being held in abeyance is because of the Police Protective League agreement that we're going to talk about tangentially in the next item, and the EAA agreement, which also holds some in abeyance. And then we are in further negotiations with the coalition, correct?
Correct.
And so those, how would you, without disclosing anything confidential, how would you describe the coalition discussions?
I am not a part of that. We would need a representative from employee relations to
Well, I would
discuss that.
describe them as pending, progressing, And come on forward. Thank you so much.
Good morning, Angela Brown with CAO ERD. I would describe them just the way you did, pending. We are in a tentative agreement with the Coalition of Unions.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you said it. So we have a tentative agreement, which could bring that number of 70 closer to 0 in advance.
Correct.
Thank you. Personnel?
Good morning, Vince Cordero at the Personnel Department. I'll provide a quick update where we are with layoff calculations and notifications. So last week I had reported that phase 3, we had notified 12 employees, and those employees were later notified that those were put on hold pending the temporary agreement. We are hoping that the agreement will be finalized so we could postpone or not move forward with those layoffs if the agreement is finalized by next Friday, September 19th. If there is no final agreement, the department has been notified that those individuals the layoff will continue at that point and will be put on leave with pay for the following 2 weeks if there's no final agreement by September 19th. Phase 4, we did have one employee who was notified of the layoff, and this person was not represented by the coalition, and therefore that layoff has moved forward. They're currently on leave with pay as of this moment. And we are moving forward with calculations with phase 6. And the reason we jumped to phase 6 is because phase 5 was the police department and covered under the Police Protective League agreement. So phase 6 is the personnel department, and we're actively calculating phase 6. If there is a final agreement, we will stop the calculations and focus on the ETP, which I'll hand off to my colleague, Steve Rivera.
Thank you. And then we'll do questions, colleagues.
Good morning, everyone. Steve Rivera with the Personnel Department. Update on ETP, Expedited Transfer Process. As of today, we have 136 CJOs, conditional job offers, that have been made to various city employees. Of those 136, 89 have been accepted. And the specific number to bring to your attention is 45 have actually been declined. 2 are pending, and 67 of the 89 CJOs that have been accepted have been completed in Workday. The others should be completed shortly. These are individuals that will probably start in the next week or 2. So that number of 67 completed should go up shortly. In terms of number of positions available for transfer, we are at 424 positions. This is across numerous job classifications. Some of the big ones to note: admin clerk, we have 50, senior admin clerk, 37, accounting clerk, 16, and various others as well. The team has been working hard. We have referred over 9,300 applications to various departments, and we have received over 1,700 applications in total. Personnel department continues to work, and just wanted to acknowledge the hard work that the various departments have been doing in receiving these applications and scheduling these candidates for interviews as well. That's our metrics update, but I think another thing to note is ETP's role moving forward, regardless if there's an agreement or not. ETP will continue to exist for the rest of this fiscal year. Our goal is to move as many people as possible. We will be working with labor to get the message and the information that needs to be presented to their members clear and consistent, that we still need these individuals to move and transfer, even if the agreements, the tentative agreements become finalized. We will work with the departments, work with individuals to communicate what the agreements mean and the importance of moving people to special funded or general funded positions that are not targeted for layoff.
So my simple summary of this is that with the over 300 folks that are in substitute authorities, even if we get the last agreement and we have brought that number down to 0 of who's on the layoff list for this year, they remain in substitute authorities for the remainder of the fiscal year until they're not in sub-authorities. And the ETP, or the transfer portal, is to take people from substitute authorities and put them into funded positions that are either either generally funded, but funded in this budget, or specially funded, or proprietary, funded with proprietary dollars. And at the end of the year, that number that remains in substitute authorities, which is not certain, if the budget of this year becomes exactly like the budget of next year, which has never been the case, but those sub-authorities would be the folks who are subject to layoff on July 1. That number, not those people, that number, because the cascade and the bouncing rights all occur. So our effort with the ETP, or the transfer portal, is to work the remainder of the year to get everybody out of substitute authorities and into continuing authorities. And we also have the variable of the budget, which will also be discussed here in council, and full council, in a different committee moving forward. So do I have that right?
Yes.
Okay. Colleagues, questions?
I don't think I saw in the report, what's the latest on the updating of city staff's time served, years of service and whatnot?
So it's moving slowly, unfortunately, but if we do have individuals that we're calculating, those are moved to the front of the line and we correct those before proceeding with the calculations. So for example, if we're calculating a class group, we work those immediately. The ones that we're not calculating, we are having weekly updates with our meetings with the personnel directors, because the updates are being done at each department by each personnel director and their staff. And we check in with them, encourage them to move this along, and provide.
Do they have a
updates.
deadline? Have they been given a deadline that it's got to be done by this date? Or you're potentially, I know we had a deadline to flag when we discovered, a deadline works really well to incent people to know that we're going to move on from here, folks. This is either a priority that you reconcile the data and correct it with your years of service, or we got to move on. So has there been a deadline established?
Not generally, but just for
That's a no.
the layoffs, yeah.
Right.
For the layoff
So
class.
there needs to be a deadline. There has to absolutely be a deadline. This keeps languishing, and the can keeps getting kicked down the road. Please don't take the example from the behaviors of other people in this building at all levels. Be the example of, we're going to set a timeline that this is going to get done by this date, and all employees have to work to meet that date, whether it's in personnel, whether it's within the department. The sooner they get it done, the sooner everyone can move forward. But it's such an important calculation for years served in this city, for the benefits, for a whole host of reasons. So I really want to impress upon you all, set a timeline, get it done. The languishing of all of this is just, again, we're never gonna, whether we've had examples that were referenced with issues around Workday or everything else, we just need deadlines that people need to start meeting. And this is a simple one that everyone can do. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much for all of your hard work, and this is an important lead into our next item, so stick around. We will continue this item to the next agenda. And I think we will find out that agreement has been reached. And when we do find that out, I think then our focus for this committee and this effort on this item is going to be the transfer portal, and make sure that we are reducing that number of substitute authorities. If you could, that's continued. If you could read the next item into the record.
Which one would you like to do?
16, please.
16. Okay.
Oh, thanks. Want me to read it?
Item 16, motion McOsker Hernandez relative to the implementation of Workday.
Thank you so much. If we could have ITA and any and all responsible parties, I wish I could name exactly who all the responsible parties were, and that's part of the problem, I think, as we've heard. My lead into this is that all of this exceptional work by the CAO and by personnel and by department heads and by our labor partners to put us in a position where we get to zero on this year's layoffs hinges upon good data and good data in Workday, as my colleague just said, but also very importantly, good functioning of Workday, because it is now publicly known that one of the most important agreements that we have from the Police Protective League is that we will be implementing a bank of time that will create savings, and that savings will prevent layoffs of people outside of the bargaining group of PPL. I don't think we say that often enough. It's an extraordinary thing, and it's one of the many extraordinary things that labor partners are doing to put us in this position, but it only works if Workday works. And so I want to get a current update on Workday issues, but I think it's going to be very important for us in this valuable time that we have to focus on the current overtime bank, the FLSA issues, the payout, the payout or the recordation of time that was described eloquently by Mr. Garza, but it is probably the tip of the sword, maybe the most important issue that we're dealing with among many on Workday right now. If that's clear, why don't you go ahead and make a presentation?
Yes, Ted Ross, General Manager with ITA. I think to help address the initial question of who supports Workday, the Controller's Office has the charter responsibility for payroll. Personnel handles HR. ITA assists them in a limited lane around technical, which is specifically security and reporting and integrations. And of course, every department is a part of it. So the reality is, you're right. It's a big system in which every department plays a role, everyone plays a role, but we are able to identify clearly around support. I'm going to ask my Assistant General Manager, Ed Magos, to provide a quick overview in regards to the 171-hour item specifically, and we couldn't agree with you more. I think the teams, and I'm speaking on behalf of controller, personnel, et cetera, have all been meeting several times a week and all have been prioritizing the item that you're describing for the very reasons you're describing.
Good morning, Ed Magos with ITA. The 171 FLSA rule has been configured in Workday since go live, and it's intended to
back up for my purposes. Maybe everybody in the room understands the rule. Can you just give us a quick overview of the 171 rule?
Certainly. It's intended to ensure that the LAPD sworn employees are paid in compliance with the Fair Labor Standards Act, and the state overtime laws. It is tied to the deployment period of 28 days that sworn officers work. As configured in Workday today, it does take into account holiday time offs, paid, unpaid time, and overtime. Each of these deployment periods for LAPD are done in partnership with the Controller's Department. They're required to reconcile the time and the absence submissions to ensure compliance with all city policies and procedures.
I think at the heart of the issue is this is another example, much like fire department, of time being entered in a separate system, being sent over to Workday that then applies controls. If there's time sent over that doesn't meet FLSA requirements, the time gets rejected, which then means that LAPD payroll staff have to resolve the time before payroll is processed. For 97+% of the time for LAPD, it doesn't have a problem. But because of the uniqueness of some of these rules and because of the data that's being sent over, there are situations in which something, as was mentioned by Mr. Garza, can cause a negative balance, et cetera, things that are clearly not the appropriate rules.
Right.
Ed will continue, but there's been, I think, a lot of work on the process, and there's continuing to be a new investment of time and energy to help resolve any remaining issues. This isn't related to the near-term solution, but there's clearly long-term solutions that have to be implemented. There's data entered in systems coming over that's clearly can't be processed through Workday because it's inappropriate to be processed. We need the validations in that subsidiary system so that we're not sending bad data in. But I think Ed will continue to go through this, and we can answer any questions you have, or we'll try to.
Okay.
Sure. So since we've launched in more than a year now, the vast majority of these payouts are handled and correctly configured per 171. There are edge cases and there are scenarios where negative balances are showing up. Custom reports were provided. There was instruction and cross-training on how to keep up with that, but it does require extra work. And I know that with staff spread thin at each of the departments, some of those validations and those extra reports to kind of check and catch things before they run through, don't happen in time, and then we'll have to do these manual corrections, right? And so when the discussion about the voluntary overtime bank came up, the ITA, who helps facilitate conversations, this is not our bread and
We're not
butter.
payroll experts.
We're learning this as well, but we do facilitate because we oversee the platform, the Workday platform. We've been facilitating multiple meetings per week with the controller's office and personnel and the CAO to understand how to quickly get the voluntary overtime bank configured. In those discussions in partnership with LAPD, we found that some of these scenarios in 171 are blockers to implement the voluntary overtime bank. And so that has been prioritized. As soon as that was kind of discussed in that joint meeting, we reached out to Workday, really at the behest of LAPD, to bring back one of the consultants who is not on the project because the project has ended, but they implemented the original configurations and said, can this person, perhaps because they built it, be the quickest to review the code, understand the logic, work closely with LAPD. And so we've spoken with Workday, and they have agreed to bring that person back on for the next 8 weeks.
At no cost for what it's worth.
Additionally, with another consultant to help identify what needs to be tweaked or reconfigured on the 171 rule such that it is not a blocker to implementing the voluntary overtime bank. And in parallel, the controller's office is setting up the new codes in Workday for the voluntary overtime bank. Everything that can be done in parallel so that when the 171 logic is fixed, everything else will already be done at the same time so that we can move quickly. So there is a high level of kind of urgency, and we see the priority here.
But there's two issues, right? And correct me if I'm not seeing this. Today, Workday is not adequately processing through the 171 issue. That's a today problem. Forget the fact that we have an agreement.
Yes, there are scenarios where it is not working as it should.
The data coming.
That's real-time pay for people today.
Yes.
Has to be fixed.
Correct.
And so you're expressing urgency, and they're coming back for, I don't care how many hours it is. They're staying Workday's staying until it's done.
Correct.
And then does that same work put us in a position where this voluntary bank that we've all agreed to, that two sides have agreed to, that will be a functional a mechanism, that will be actually a tool for us? Because without that, people are getting laid off.
My understanding, sitting in some of these meetings, again, not being a payroll person, my understanding is that the path to the voluntary overtime bank is understood. It's being configured in Workday. It's clear how to get there.
By the controller's office.
Correct. And that there's a way to do this. And so resolving the 171 issues with those calculations will be the path that it will unblock the implementation then of the voluntary overtime bank.
Do we not have the payroll expert of the controller here today?
That I'm not sure.
Do we have the payroll expert of LAPD here today? I know I see Trina. And I know that you're working, I've heard excellent reports of how hard you all are working on it, so I appreciate that. I think this is a situation where labor and police management are on the same side here.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for that. Trina Unziger, I'm the CFO with LAPD. Yes, we really appreciate the partnership with with PPL. They've been by our side in a number of the meetings and the discussions on a lot of the issues that we're having, but in particular with the 171 rule, we do have a couple of snow tickets memorializing the issues on this. And then in addition to that, there's also efforts that are being made by HRP's absence team for the VOB. So we are working together as a team as closely as we can.
What do you need as I forget what your acronym is. There's so many acronyms at LAPD, but what do you need as the most important piece on the management side of paying people accurately?
Well, we are really grateful that Workday is allowing the expert who seems to be the best versed in the 171-hour rule, Sam Magoon. He's an expert who is with us until he rolled off the project in September of 2024. Yeah. So we had begun the initial configurations, but One thing that I appreciate about him is that he understands the difference between smoothing, because I know it's very tempting to try to pull all these issues together. There's also a 160-hour rule.
Uh-huh.
He knows the difference between that, 171. I think he sees the end product clearly. So we have a lot of confidence that if it can be done, he will be able to do that. And to Ted's point, my understanding is that Workday is doing that free of charge. And that's outside of the existing contract that they have with us now.
Yeah.
So I very much appreciate having that expert. I appreciate the fact that it sounds as if they do have a deployment specialist now, which I hadn't heard about at Workday previously. I believe based on the conversation that we had yesterday, they're giving us 50 to 60 hours of this deployment specialist. So I think that will be helpful too, because there are some integration issues. I think you're familiar with those. I believe the fire department was here in January and February talking about their NSS integration issues with Workday. We also go in by integration using DPS.
Mm-hmm.
So we have some similar issues to what fire was experiencing. So I'm hoping that that deployment specialist will also be able to assist in honing in on a solution. So that's fantastic. And I'm also happy to hear you say that Workday should remain until it's done, because we're talking about a fairly limited number of hours.
Yep.
We're talking about a period of perhaps 8 weeks. I do wonder what will happen if there's no solution in place at the 8-week mark. I know that we as an HRP team, I know we have ITA support in getting that fixed. But I would like to see what the plan is when we get to the end of that.
We have, I'm just going to respond to that, then I'm going to turn to my colleagues. And I do want to get to fire as well. I think today would be important to do police and do fire and probably hold this thing over until the next week, not send it up to council. I don't think this motion is ready for prime time. I think we need to hold it in committee for a little bit. But yes, I said Workday needs to stay, and I appreciate that you're all saying Workday has been nice guys by giving us this much, and they can get a lot of credit for that. The opposite is true too. If this doesn't work, I mean, they're on blast, because the 160, 171 is nothing new. This is central to the business, and if they don't have the capacity, if their product doesn't have the capacity to do it, Mr. Garza is not wrong. Move on, and that's would be disastrous for us financially, but I think it'd be more disastrous for Workday. Questions?
Good morning. And I want to thank you, because Ted, I think people need to really understand you're the technical expert in helping to get these systems to try and talk to each other, but you're not the expert with respect to the codes that personnel uses to help integrate all these pieces, what each of the respective departments are involved in. So, and the controller's office. So I want to be clear, because I think the general public or folks that come don't really quite understand when we talked about, you each play your own role in each lane to help it integrate seamlessly. And we had established, based on what we saw the fire department going through with their payroll issues. And I asked the question then about whether or not their systems were equally upgraded in order to track, again, some of the payroll. The reason why you have to manually do it is because when you have a legacy system and a new system, they don't talk to each other. And they were highly designed, specialty design. God bless the person who made all the money with that system years ago. But when you're trying to integrate a more, we'll call it off the shelf with, specialized system designs, given the uniqueness, the reality is either going to force us to change, and everyone has to adapt and grow. We can't be so beholden to an aged system that requires us to manually make upgrades for, you're going to pay one way or another. You're going to pay for the technology that takes the data and seamlessly transmits it to our payroll system, or you're going to hold on for dear life for an old system that frankly is ready to crash and burn at some point. But because we're unwilling to have hard conversations about how we have to modernize all of our systems, are we in the same circumstance with LAPD's payroll
Yes.
system.
Correct. In fact, council member, if politics doesn't work for you, feel free to become the general manager of ITA, because I think you did a very good job of summarizing that. The LAPD system, it's a subsidiary system. It's feeding data into Workday. Most of the time, it's not a problem, but some of the times it's feeding data and that Workday will reject. Workday has controls. These are validated, verifiable controls. And when that data is sent in, they're getting a report saying that data needs to be corrected. They're understaffed. They don't have the people to make all the corrections in a tight timeline
Right.
to get everyone paid correctly. So then they have to then move the work into the following week or after to then get an emergency check done. Fortunately, we're in a world in which something like 0.2% per pay period is an emergency check. This is not a system that every pay period just, tens of thousands of problems, et cetera. It's working for most people, just about all the time. However, that's still a sizable number of people from LAPD. That this isn't in any way to minimize the problem.
Of course, no
if
one's-
I'm an officer,
No,
yes,
right, absolutely.
and you're entirely
and I
right.
don't want anyone to ever suggest or disparage that city staff doesn't understand that a single person being affected with their
Correct.
paycheck doesn't,
Correct.
it's not important. The number's not substantial enough.
That's right.
I want everybody to be clear
Yes.
that I know that you all are concerned about everybody that is being impacted, because one paycheck can make a huge
does.
difference in a
That's right.
family's
I've had
situation.
situations where I put something in the mail, the insurance company didn't receive it, they'll cancel insurance
Right.
like days later. I mean,
Right.
we're in a very severe world.
Correct.
We've got to get our everything paid on time accurately. But to go back to your question, the LAPD needs either to be on a Workday timekeeping so that this data is getting validated when it's entered, or they need a subsidiary system that's modern, to your point, much like fire department, same conversation.
Right.
So that's a key item. So while there's immediate items to get this resolved so that we could get this bank implemented as fast as possible, as the chair was describing, this is layoffs, this is human beings on the line. While there are short-term goals in which there's work being done on the 171 and there's work being done by Bob Hess and Associates to help make improvements on the LAPD subsidiary system, et cetera, they need to have a different mechanism because I think they're overwhelmed by manual work right now.
Right.
May I also add that ITA has been working closely with the fire department to do the bake-off or to do the evaluation of Workday's time tracking system and another vendor. And we've invited the LAPD to participate in that review so that they're also seeing similar capabilities that might solve similar issues.
Okay, I'm going to ask fire to come up next, though. I get what you're saying, though. You're talking about the.
So I'm going to continue real quick. Thank you. So, I mean, I guess, and again, I'm just going to kind of button this up a little bit, is that we continue to be a penny wise and a pound foolish when it comes to these conversations. And I just want to, again, communicate to our labor partners. I know how important this all is, but we're going to suffer through it one way or another. And are we truly going to modernize our systems so that we don't leave employees in a situation that they're strung out because they're not getting paid properly? Or are we willing to adapt? Are we willing to grow? When I first opened a checking account, I used to have to write a check. Now I can Zelle. Now I can Apple Pay. We are all capable of learning and modernizing and changing how we do things. And it'll work better and it'll be efficient. We just have to be willing to work together to adapt, to modernize. Because, God bless PDs, what you all do to make these antiquated systems still function in the 21st century is obscene. And they're stressed out because they want to take care of the employees. So let us all work together to take care of those employees. And let's all work on a system that works for everybody, that is modernized, that can communicate with one another, that we're not struggling and rushing to try and find overtime money to manually correct a system that, if it was just entered into a modernized system the first time, would require nominal corrections and oversight. And I'm begging everybody, because if we're truly in it together, let's be in it together and let's fix this. But it's going to require us to have some adaptations and change, and let's modernize. We can do this if we're all willing to say, let go of the old. Let's invest in a new, and let's figure it out so our employees get paid without having them stressed out that that their payroll is wrong. No one deserves that. And the city, we're the second largest city in the country. There's no excuse that we should have antiquated systems like this. But it's not for the lack of the advocacy. I will tell you that. I know from ITA's perspective, they're like, and I know from all the different personnel sections from every department, they would love it. It would give them tremendous relief. But we all have to be in it together, guys. That's the bottom line. We all have to work on this together. Thank you.
Councilmember?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. I have a couple of questions. So some things that I heard was that we're short-staffed in order to put everything in order, and that we're executing emergency checks. Are we using AI for any of that? And I'm really concerned about.
At this point, we do not use AI as a part of our payroll process.
Are we using it in any part of our personnel systems?
Generally, no. No, right now AI really fits, its footprint is in things like email generation. And so it's really relating to email, calendar, et cetera. We do not have AI turned on related to payroll processes or HR functions, et cetera. As a general statement, yes, especially in this context.
And then as far as the integration of the old system and the new system, do we have a time goal on that? Did we set a deadline, like my colleague said earlier about deadlines on other things? Do we have a deadline on when we should have the full integration?
So there's work being done by Bob Hess and Associates who helped build the old system. They're working around one channel around validation rules to help make sure that the old system isn't sending unvalidated into the new system. There's work being done by Workday. I think that's probably the most important swim lane is the Workday swim lane. Ed, to your knowledge, I'm not aware. I know they start. When have they start?
On next week.
Okay, so Workday staff start next week. I think there already is a rolling start. I think they're already very familiar with what's being worked on, what has to be resolved. But to your point, I do not know a time frame from them in regards to resolution. That's probably, as they call that in project management, the critical path. It's probably the most important work is the work that's being done by Workday on that.
May I also add that from a overall kind of project, the HRP project, since we launched, again, with the teams, the work streams across personnel controller, ITA, and the CAO, the team receives, again, across kind of the Workday world, between 800 and 1,000 tickets of a variety of type every month, and we are closing more than come in every month, but it is a slightly more than comes in. There is a significant backlog, and I will say that the team is working fast and furious, but we are chipping away at the backlog. And these are things that can't be chipped away at. And so one of the things that has been difficult to the capacity question is that for year one, knowing that the city teams that are trained and becoming daily more and more proficient on Workday needed some assistance to make sure we can move at the speed we need to. And we had a team of 11 consultants supporting us in year one. We did not receive funding for that in year two. We have gone from 11 to 3 consultants. The project team that built out the original thing has rolled off after the hypercare period. So we are working under constraints, and we on the ITA side, just helping project manage some of this. We have the departments that have the most tickets. We, ITA, my team, will meet with them weekly and say, these are the collective priorities across the universe of Workday, an HRP, for your department. Do you agree? Are these the most critical ones? Are these the highest ones? And so we get that feedback and we bring it back. But so we're trying to make sure that in our limited capacity that we are triaging and that we are looking within our resources at the most, critical areas. But there's a wide surface here. And so, one of the areas that we will continue to, and in the next budget cycle, we will ask for additional support to help clear out some of this backlog. Additionally, both on the fire and the police side, these new systems are new projects. So to move the sworn into some form of modern time tracking, that handles absence, that's connected into the banks, either directly in Workday or from another system. They need to know what are those overtime banks, what are the vacation banks, and that has to be done in real time so that these errors are just done and calculated immediately.
And my last question,
No problem.
and so you said that you'll have a consultant that was on the original team come back for 8 weeks to try to streamline.
Yes, Workday is
This
sending several people to come and to be
To
able to
clear this
assist. Yes.
immediate issue because
Yes.
they're so time sensitive, and that is being done pro bono, but it's beyond our contract and what we actually funded this year.
But is it something that should have been done when you implemented the system? Was it something that,
That's why they're doing pro bono.
yeah, it does, like, it doesn't
That-
seem like
that's a
hey, I'm doing you a favor.
Well,
when you
we're,
didn't-
we're a step removed from the process. So I can't say I was in those conversations or in the discussions of what was built, what was tested, and how it rolled out, et cetera. But I think everyone agrees that this needs to work and work right. When you build a big project, a lot of things that maybe weren't seen in scope end up becoming in scope. And so these types of issues are very clear that for good results, this needs to be resolved. I think for me, that's the most important takeaway on my part.
I mean, for us too, right?
Yeah.
We need-
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
And
All
Miss
right,
and
thank
Miss
you.
Hutt, it's and goes back to what I was saying is that when they said, okay, let's get Workday, all the other departments, fire, police, any other, if they're using something specialized, those systems weren't modernized. So that's where we are today. But if for whatever reason that decision wasn't made for either an unwillingness or resistance or lack of financial support to do it, I don't know. I wasn't in the room when it happened, but here we are. And at the end of the day, as I said, you're going to pay one way or another, either by manually doing corrections because you have a legacy system trying to communicate with a modernized system. We're just going to constantly have this problem. So thank you.
As part of the budget process, we are looking to support investments both in fire and in police for whatever subsidiary systems or capabilities in Workday they need for them to be as 100% resolved as possible.
Okay, so I'm going to ask fire to come on up, fire management. Gina, thank you so much for being here. I do feel that while every single, I completely agree with my colleague that every penny and every paycheck is important. If everything's equally important, nothing gets done. This 171, 160 issue in police has to go to the top of the list because it is immediately a problem, but it also means that if we can't implement something that we agreed across the table at arm's length with a labor group to prevent folks from being laid off, if we can't do that, we have to quickly know why we can't do that, or we have to quickly know that we can and we are going to do it. Fire has had related issues and unique issues. I mean, how is it coming in fire, and how are we doing with the mountain of tickets that are backlogged and we all inherited even before Workday showed up?
Thank you for the opportunity, sir. Emilio Rodriguez with Administrative Services Bureau, Fire Department.
Thank you.
So as you'll recall, over the past several months, there were a number of issues raised specifically by the sworn membership.
Yeah.
7 altogether. If I can recap some of them, there were relating to retro payments, overtime rate adjustments, pension contributions, medical subsidy increases, et cetera. So many of those have been resolved through our weekly coordination with ITA, Controller's Office, Personnel Department, our Pensions Office, and Workday representatives through some extent. So the one significant remaining item is actually a configuration needed within Workday to automatically calculate overtime retro payments. So that continues under development. We're expecting it to be active by the end of June in time for the MOU 22 chief officer adjustments. But that hasn't happened. It continues in development, although it is much closer to fruition. retro adjustments were manually processed for MOU 23 members. That's the general membership. ITA and LAFD are trying to expedite final resolution on that so that payroll will not have to manually process the chief officer adjustments as well. So, you know, we can continue to provide an update on that. So that's the remaining one on the 7 larger items. There are ancillary issues regarding 6-time cascading, whether that's falling into the appropriate buckets for each member. That's yet to be resolved. And the rest, there are a number of other items, but that not necessarily affecting the membership overall, but affecting subsets of members and individuals, which translate into snow tickets. So those are also being addressed as they are received.
Is there anything like the 171 issue that we're seeing in police that is happening in fire? I mean, fire, I think, has such a unique challenge where there's so many work assignments and so many different pays, and firefighters by their very nature can be working different positions in different, you know, even within the same pay period. I get all of that. So it's important to know, you know, how accurate we are week in, week out, but is there any blockbuster like the 171, 160 rule that we're seeing violated in fire and police? Anything like that happening in fire? And, you know, maybe I should be asking you, Flack, but are you seeing anything like that?
I think some of that is being addressed through the transition from our network staffing system to Workday.
Yeah.
A lot of those issues are sort of in the weeds, and they're going to be sort of explored further during the bake-off process. Right.
The bake-off for the, what was the acronym of our work assignment? NSS.
It's the
bake-off,
network
NSS,
staffing system.
and the next product?
Yeah, may I add that the with ITA, we've been working closely with Sammy Nahosa with the fire department. Collectively, we put together a list of requirements, functionality that is in the network scheduling system related to deployments, to the daily hires, to all the complexity that is the day-to-day, you know, needs of the sworn for the fire department. Those requirements have been shared with Workday, with some other vendors in this space. The bake-offs are scheduled. You know, everything's in place now so that fire and police now jointly is brought in to see, because we do agree that there are likely, you know, parallels or overlaps here. So we want them to, as quickly as possible, become familiar with the functionality that will address many of these areas. And so that they can make a decision.
I know we shorthand and call it the bake-off, but this goes directly to Councilmember Rodriguez's excellent point that the technology that tracks this time needs to be modernized, and we can't have bad information into Workday or whatever happens.
Correct.
With the payroll system.
It either needs to be directly in Workday or it needs to be tightly
So we've been
coupled.
talking about the bake-off for a long time, and you know, we're getting kind of hungry for it. When's it coming?
So one with one vendor will be in 2 weeks, and then the other one is in 3 weeks. These are 3-hour sessions where they will walk through all the requirements. Some time was taken for fire to put together all the scenarios to make sure that when they see these 3-hour demos, it really speaks to their specific needs.
So 2 weeks and 3 weeks. I'm going to recommend that we keep this item on our calendar, but then in a couple of meetings, we're going to have a report on how the bake-offs went.
Correct.
Colleagues, questions?
I just also wanted to ask about the status of DWP, because I know they also raised concerns.
The DWP go live when it comes to payroll, their recent go. I think generally, from everything I've been hearing, generally successful. And so they were able to get checks cut, checks processed. They've been providing support. We actually spent a significant amount of time teaching them lessons learned. So because we were live about a year before they were, we were able to share with them all sorts of aspects over the course of that year. So from what I'm hearing, they've been having minimal emergency checks, and they've been processing stably. I expect there's certain cases in which something isn't the way it should be, but there has been no big red flags, as I understand, with their payroll launch.
Questions? I think the controller's payroll specialist is here. You want to come forward if you're available? Thank you. And your
My
name
name
and
is
for record?
Dong, and I'm with payroll system.
Thank you very much. Thanks
Sorry
for being here.
I didn't know I'm supposed to be here today. So.
Oh, that's fine. We're going to keep it on the agenda, so we will let you know that you're welcome to come to the next meeting too, because we're going to keep tracking this.
Okay.
I want to come back to the head of this presentation was talking about the 171, the FLSA issues for the police department.
Right.
And we're getting assurances that Workday is on its way back, which is fine. But how is this? How do you see this? The timing and the method of resolving this issue, so that we can be assured that folks we are following FLSA and paying people or holding time on the books accurately, and putting ourselves in a position where we can meet our obligations on the most recent labor agreement to create a bank of time for our layoff avoidance. It's a lot of stuff in there, but tell me how it's going.
My understanding is that
Right into the mic would be great.
my understanding is that they will try to bring back the person who would configure this 171 rule in Workday and try to resolve all the issue that we currently have with 171 rule. The configuration probably did not configure correctly, so that we have issue with the rule.
Do you have a sense, and I realize you might not be able to speak for the whole office, but do you have a sense that this is a high priority for the controller's office to get this right?
I understand that, yes.
I mean, more than just, although it would be enough, more than just paychecks are depending upon this. We also have a labor deal that absolutely requires us to be competent at banked time. Otherwise, folks get laid off sooner rather than later. Not really a question.
Right, I understand.
Yeah, this is Mike Scheer from the Controller's Office. No, this is absolutely something that is all the way up to the controller himself. James Robinson, who's our principal deputy controller, was in the meetings this week with Ted and all the other partners, along with the head of our payroll, along with the person who is the head of the Workday integration, who had left city service but has returned to city service. So it's all hands on deck in order to get this solved from every angle.
Thank you. Colleagues, questions, comments? So thank you very much. We're not going to pass this up to the council. I'm going to recommend that we hold this in committee and come back, and everyone, the controllers invited, but certainly, ITA, LAPD, LAFD will do follow-up specifically on DWP. And if you can flag in working with the staff that there's other departments that need to come on in, I think that before we pass this motion to have a monthly report back, I think we need to have a greater understanding of the accuracy and the efficacy of Workday. So we will hold this in committee. Thank you very much. Thanks for everyone coming. I appreciate that you came on short notice, and now you are invited formally.
Okay.
Thanks. Why don't we move to item 3? I think item 3 has a greater time urgency than item 6, in case we don't get to it.
Item number 3 is a joint personnel department and CAO report relative to MO35 hiring hall practices.
Thank you very much. I think we are joined by CIO personnel. You could give us a brief report.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Antonio Cepeda, and I'm with the CAO Employee Relations Division. So the report before you today examines two distinct hiring arrangements for hiring hall craft workers through Memorandum of Understanding 35 and separately through project labor agreements. The report compares those practices and positions them in contrast to the city's targeted local hire program. So as a summary of key points in the report, MOU 35 is a non-exclusive labor agreement negotiated by CAO ERD between the city and the Los Angeles Orange County's Building and Construction Trades Council, who represents about 18 unions of the agreement. MOU 35 allows city departments to directly hire craft workers on an as-needed basis from hiring halls to perform trades work, special projects, and to augment a department's current civil service workforce to reduce work backlogs. In contrast, project labor agreements are exclusive hiring arrangements between certain city departments and trades unions meant for specific long-term construction and capital projects. Project labor agreements require that construction contractors who work on such projects source craft labor from union hiring halls. However, those craft workers employed by those contractors are not city employees. So unlike MOU 35, PLAs are not negotiated by ERD. A key distinction between MOU 35 and project labor agreements is that PLAs mandate specific hiring goals that target certain demographic groups and focus on local employment from specific locations, whereas MOU 35 does not. Workers hired under MOU 35 are different than full-time and part-time city employees. MOU 35 unit members pay into Social Security. They are not members of any city pension plan. Base wage compensation for them is primarily set by union master labor agreements. They're not negotiated by the city. And with the exception of sick leave, which is a statutory benefit, the unions set and administer the various fringe benefits for the craft workers, and those include medical insurance coverage, vacation, supplemental pensions, and training. So the city only pays for certain fringe benefits, and they're based on a per-hour basis. So although MOU 35 and project labor agreements use union hiring hall referral systems for workers, these serve different purposes. And as regards the targeted local hire program, it also has a referral system component, but the purpose of the program is different, and it provides pathways for permanent civil service employments for individuals that have barriers to employment across a wide range of entry level city jobs. And the purpose of MOU 35 and PLA is different than that.
Cynthia Fletas with the Personnel Department.
Yes.
As part of this report back at the Personnel Department, we did review MOU 35 and identified the classifications within the MOU that currently have an existing pathway into permanent civil service employment. And that includes two classifications, electrical craft helper as well as communications electrician. Additionally, under MOU 35, we do have an existing apprenticeship program for electrician. And as part of the report back, we also identified a total of 17 classifications that could be further explored for potential apprenticeships, as well as 4 that would potentially fit under the Bridge to Jobs program.
Thank you. I'll have one question to start, then I'll turn it over to my colleagues. I did not see the laborers. Given that, are the laborers included in our MOU 35, and what do we have apprenticeship programs available to the laborers union?
The labor classification is part of MOU 35.
Okay, I did not see it in the report. That's important to know. Colleagues, questions? Yes.
Yes, that was the same observation. Can you clarify how the city is going to ensure classifications like electrician helper do not undermine or replace existing positions traditionally filled by other crafts?
From a personnel perspective, the apprenticeship program for electrician, which utilizes electrician assistant, is used as an alternative pathway It doesn't replace the traditional civil service process. It's meant to supplement the hiring the city's workforce.
So when Mr. McCosker asked the question about laborers, there's been some expressed apprehension that the expansion of the classifications under MOU 35 could eliminate positions or reassign work historically done by laborers. So what safeguards are in place to prevent the displacement or erosion of that jurisdiction in this amendment?
Well, both MOU 35 and the MOU 2, who covers the various civil service full-time craft classifications, are represented by the same union, by the Trades Council. That's who we work with. MOU 35 members are as needed. They don't occupy civil service or rather regular position authorities. So they're compensated strictly by the budgeted funds that departments have, and they don't take away from regular position authorities. So the union that represents both of those MOUs has not expressed any concern with the current method of hiring through MOU 35, at least to my knowledge.
Okay, I think we might want to double check, because I don't think, I think there are concerns.
Will do.
Okay.
Colleague? Yeah, I agree. I agree with my colleague. I think we look into that. I realize the benefit of having an MOU is that we as the owners of the signatories don't resolve jurisdictional disputes, but we have to make sure that we're not redefining roles that create what would otherwise be a jurisdictional dispute. And I don't think this is the setting to get into it, but let's make sure that we're following up. Our grand hope, I think I share this with all my colleagues, is to get HACLA to sign to do a PLA for system-wide. Should HACLA, which they're being urged greatly to finish their negotiations and get to a point where they have a PLA, HACLA be able to tap into MOU 35 and use the hiring hall? Is that kind of how it works when we have an agency, a sister agency in the city that has a PLA? I mean, has a system-wide PLA?
No, so the PLA and MU 35, they're separate. Through a project labor agreement, the agency is negotiating with the various unions.
Yeah.
And so they will bid for projects and there will be contractors selected, and those contractors will hire from the hiring hall if the PLA has that stipulation in the agreement. MOU 35 is meant for the city to employ directly hiring hall workers. So there's two separate things. But if that agency is currently in negotiations, they could add into their PLA that a source of craft workers should be or primarily be from the hiring hall. And they wouldn't be tapping from or using MU 35, but they would be making agreements with the individual unions to source from their hiring halls.
I see. Thank you for that clarification. Any colleagues, any other questions? Hearing none, then I move that we note and file the joint personnel and CIO report. And thank you very much for that report.
Okay, for that item, Councilmember McCosker,
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez,
Aye.
Councilmember Hutt.
Yes.
That matter, note and file.
Thank you. Item 6, could you read that into the record? Yes.
Item number 6, Personnel Department report relative to the status of sworn personnel workers' compensation claims.
Thank you so much. We took it out of order and you stuck through our whole meeting. Good to see you again. Why don't you go right ahead and give us a brief report?
Good morning, Personnel Department. Holidays, Personnel Department. I think I've been sitting there too long. Holidays, Personnel Department. I'm joined here with our Chief of Workers' Compensation, Tyrone Spears. I will just give a brief opening that the Personnel Department works closely with Los Angeles Police Department and Fire Department management through its Occupational Safety and Health Division. They meet with them. They have a standing in-person meeting where they meet with management, aside from all the other citywide work they do, to discuss any regulatory updates, specific concerns about, particular trends or any questions that management might have or any updates our safety division might have for them. Personnel Department has a continued relationship with these same members of management through our Chief of Workers' Comp, Tyrone Spears, who is available to them, and they utilize him to call them for any of their needs or questions once a claim is filed, once a workers' comp claim is filed. So that relationship is ongoing. We are available to them anytime they need us. And with that, we'll answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Spears, you want to add anything?
No, Councilman McOsker, I think Paula covered it. We'll just take any questions from the report back.
Thank you, colleagues.
Yes, well, thank you. I introduced this motion because of the concerns that have been raised from members in the field that I've heard in terms of not getting timely responses on their workers' comp claims and obviously the impact to our deployment and how that actually affects and costs the city a great deal of resources, because we have to maintain a minimum deployment for whether it's fire and police, right? So I know the state has just recently, they compressed the timeline from 90 to 75 days. And how confident are you with the city's ability to meet those requirements?
I'll answer that. Yeah, sure. So yeah, the state of California did for presumption claims. So sworn personnel across California has certain injuries that are presumptive. And originally we had 90 days to determine or make a decision on the claim to accept, delay, or deny. And they've changed that to reduce the time to 75 days to make that decision. It really impacts the claims because given just the nature of the system, the time it takes to get appointments, the time it takes to investigate claims and do all the discovery that you need to do, we couldn't do it in 90 days. So to reduce it to 75 days just further compound the problem. So it didn't help. It didn't help statewide. And we're in the same situation we're in where we can't make decisions in 75 days. So those claims usually are conditionally denied until all the steps are taken and all the conditions are met.
So have you figured out a pathway to help fix it? Rather than if it's just a matter of, I understand the compression, you're like, well, we didn't make 90, we're not going to make 75. That's not an answer. So we have to figure out how we're going to get there, right? So what has been identified as approaches that we might take or changes that we might make to procedurally how we do things so that we can fulfill it?
Right. Well, the issue is outside of the city's control, right? These are external issues that we have no control, so we cannot.
So you're telling me their inability to seek medical verification is the biggest issue?
Correct. So for the presumptive claims, a good majority of them, if not 100% of them, have to go to something that we call a qualified medical evaluation, which is a state list by the state of California, or an agreed medical evaluator, which is a list that are the same doctors, but it's a list that you can have that you don't have to use the state to get the list. All of those doctors, the majority of those doctors are impacted with scheduling. So you can't get in right now to a QME for 4 to 6 months to get an appointment. And then it takes 45 to 90 days to get the report. So as you can see, we're already into almost a year, sometimes before we can even get a decision, a medical legal decision to tell us if that injury, illness, or body system is connected to the job and industrial. And we need that decision to make, we need that report and a medical opinion to make a decision on whether we can accept the claim or not. So again, that's why I said that the issues and delays are outside of our control. We can't force the doctors to, In our police ADR program, we're doing a better job than fire because we have an ADR program and we have a set of doctors. And so we don't have to use the state's list per se. We have a separate list.
Right.
But again, those doctors are now impacted, just like the state doctors. So,
So is it better at this juncture for employees, like, for example, because I look at the cancer,
Sure.
especially with considering the bouts of cancer.
Yes.
People are delayed treatment, which is only going to exacerbate their issues. And I mean, and it doesn't even have to be as extreme as cancer,
Right.
but an injury will only fester if it's not tended to because they're sitting there waiting. So what is the best course of action for our employees? For them to sue the city for these injuries after the fact? Or are we going to figure out a better way forward? And so I just like, what corrections legislatively that we have to make? What, like, that's what I'm looking for. I'm
Right.
looking for what are we going to do to fix this? Because 90 days, 75 days, this is all failure.
Yes.
And our personnel is injured. They're injured. They've got cancer, and the languishing of them getting tended to could ultimately lead to their demise. And these are real people. These are our city family. These are individuals who deserve treatment and a response, and not a, well, you know, we got to do this and they can't get the schedule, so we just deny the claim is not the answer. So what recommendations to fix what's broken aside from that? Because right now we can't get people treated for the ailments, whether we discern, you know, whether some outside agency discerns, okay, well, that's not, yes, it was work related or not. I'm not questioning when someone goes and plays softball and then gets injured and then comes and files a claim. Okay, I got that. That's easy. But I'm talking about the legitimate, like, cancer.
Right.
I'm talking about and people are sitting there, they're off duty, can't work, and they're actually just dying.
If I can address that. So the first part we talked about was the exception of the claims and the presumption in the 90 days. But as far as treatment, so first we take cancer claims. For cancer, we have a carve-out agreement and program where we allow the injured city employee to treat for their cancer under their group health plan, not to delay, because we cannot delay treatment, right? So we have an agreement with LAFRA and LAPRA that they would get treatment under the group health plan to continue the cancer treatment. And then once we make our decision, we reimburse the plan 100% of what they paid. And it works well. We don't interrupt care. We don't make a family have to go from chemo treatments to now into.
Why couldn't we approach similarly when you have, like, let's say, I don't know, you're in a physical position and all of a sudden you've got a back injury. Or,
right.
Why couldn't we approach similarly the same strategy?
Well, I'm getting to the second part.
Okay.
So the first part was cancer. So all non-cancer claims, even though we have to get this medical appointment to make this medical legal decision, the employee is still getting treatment. We have to provide treatment up to $10,000 during the delay period. So just because we're waiting for this appointment that may take 6 months or 4 months, they're still getting treatment from the occupational clinic, from the orthopedist. They're getting their medication, they're getting physical therapy. It's just their claim is not accepted. And what they may not be getting, if they're losing time, they're not getting 4850 or workers' comp benefits. They're using their sick time. So that's really the part that's delayed, but medical treatment is continuing. We're paying that from day one, but they're using their own time until such time as we accept the claim. And then when we accept the claim, we go back.
Reimburse that time.
Right, we go back and give them back their sick time, and we pay them the workers' comp time. And that works really well, except now with the Workday issues where we can't convert all the time back. But that's really the issue.
All roads lead to Workday, apparently.
So they do get treatment day one. I mean, there should be no employee that's sitting at home saying, I don't get treatment, because they should call our office because they should be getting treatment. They just are not getting the work comp pay. That's the part that's delayed until we get the decision. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Go right ahead.
They're not getting the work. they're not getting their regular work pay. They're not getting workman's comp pay. They're using sick time pay.
Correct. If they're off work, if their injury has caused them to be taken off work and we haven't accepted the claim because we're waiting for this appointment that I talked about, yes, they're using their own accrued time until such time as we accept the claim, and then we go back and convert all that, put all their time back in their bank and convert that to workers' comp pay.
And then you said really that assessment takes about a year?
No, I'm just giving you, it could take anywhere from 6 months to a year, just depends on the specialty. So definitely if it's a cancer claim, oncologists, med legal, they're just few and far that does workers' comp, so those take a long time. But if it's an orthopedic injury, like a back claim, those are seen pretty routinely, so those are probably within the 4 to 6 months. But cardiac for heart, any of those specialty specialists that you need, those could take up to a year possibly to get the report.
And what happens if they use all their personal time? What happens with that?
Or if they use all their personal time before we make a decision, that happens, but it's usually unfortunate because people usually have a good bank, but then they go into their LTD plans. So for police, we just got off a call yesterday about all the different things they can do if they run out of their accrued time. So there's a catastrophic bank, there's their LTD plan. So all of those things combined, they usually can sustain some type of pay. But we rarely see anyone use 100% of their sick, vacation, PT, other banks. It usually doesn't go into that normally, unless we have a new employee that's injured. We do have that, and they usually tap into the catastrophic leave bank if they qualify.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate the report and all of your efforts. I've enjoyed working with you in a past life.
Yeah.
Always enjoy working with you in this life. I'm just going to move that we note and file the Personnel Department report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Very much.
Councilmember McCosker.
Aye.
Councilmember Hutt.
Aye.
Note and file.
Good work. So do we have anything else in front of us?
That clears the desk.
We are adjourned.